Hi, I'm Camalita Naicker. I'm a PhD student at the university currently known as Rhodes, and I was a member of the Black Student Movement. Um, I want to speak a bit about what the student politics in South Africa represents in the broader trajectory of popular politics in South Africa. What are some of its features? What has been the current contestations around the student movement, and then what could we expect to see in the future. So I won't repeat much of what Noor has said. I think that he's covered a lot of the things about the student movement that is important, and he's made some given some important insights. What I will say is that I do think that the current student movements should be seen as part of a broader trajectory of popular politics in South Africa, where we see that the modes of organizing used by the students really comes as a part of new forms of politics that has emerged as a result of the deepening political and economic crisis in South Africa. So, what do I mean by this? As Nur has mentioned, the student movements really adopted a different mode of organizing where it was more mass based student meetings, more communal forms of politics, a real rejection of hierarchical structures, both of the liberal institution but also of political parties who were trying to intervene in student politics and to some extent co-opt them, a rejection of student representative councils at universities, or of traditional student body structures that were there for negotiating with the university. And what they really tried to do is to build these kinds of autonomous movements outside of this that would have a more broad and mass base, and that would also make alliances with uh, people like workers on campus, the most vulnerable members of the university committee, or like the Black Student Movement in Grahamstown, which was very closely aligned to the unemployed people's movement, and really drawing on other organizing bodies in the broader society that felt the same kind of frustrations with representative bodies that promised a particular kind of transformation but really didn't deliver it. And I think that is what that was really at the crux of student movements, particularly the ones that were taking place at the historically white universities, like Rhodes, Wits, Stellenbosch, and the University of Cape Town, where in March last year, which saw the removal of the Rhodes statue, there was really conversations starting to happen about what an African university should look like, what a decolonized university should look like, what should a curriculum look like in an African university. And you found that in the last 10 to 15 years, the emergence of a black politics at historically white universities, because of the larger numbers of black students in the student body, who found really that these institutions were still overwhelmingly culturally and institutionally white spaces. And what did it mean to find oneself in a kind of space that was hostile to black students? So I think what we did witness and what we are witnessing is this really incredible transformative moment where you had conversations about decolonization, which quickly led to conversations about um, the fees falling or 0% increases, and then led to broader calls for free education in South Africa. And as Noor mentioned, it should be noted that these kinds of struggles have been taking place at historically black universities before and since apartheid. So these are struggles that poor black working class students have faced before. These are conversations that they've had before. And what really happens is that it comes to be put on a national agenda after it erupts at historically white universities at the end of last year, and that's what leads to the national shutdown. Um, since then, as I'm sure many of you know, there have been real fractures and contestations in the student movements. That's been coming through quite strongly from all the universities, and I think that there are a number of possible reasons for this. And I think one of the reasons, and probably the most obvious reason, is that these are mass movements of students that were often organized around single issues. There was no kind of central command. They weren't really nationally organized. Each university community was organizing their own struggles within a broader national conversation about what decolonization of free education should look like. And so you didn't really have a sense that there was you know, a very particular set of shared ideological values or principles, but it's people who come from a plurality of backgrounds, a plurality of ideological leanings, cultural differences, differences in opinion. And so, while people are often united in a moment of mass action around a single issue, um, it becomes harder to translate that maybe into other issues. Um, and secondly, I think that maybe there has been a reluctance to engage with the fact that this has happened before at historically black universities, and maybe to seriously engage with the debates that were happening there at the end of the 1990s and the early 2000s. Particularly conversations that were happening around neoliberalization and managerialism at these universities, and people who were really warning against what the idea of deracializing management or structures of domination as opposed to democratizing them would do. I think the other the other issue, and a third possible reason, which is the most contentious right now, is that there seems to be multiple readings of what free education should look like, multiple readings of black identity, multiple readings of class politics, and multiple readings of, and the most contentious issue right now, feminism and patriarchy within the movements. And this is what seems to be the biggest issue at the moment. And I think that it's fabulous that people are having these conversations, and the the possibility, however, of having a broad, large space for vibrant, challenging, and difficult debate is facing enclosure from what some people say are elite groups of students who are either meeting with political parties or meeting with the institution, or who have a very authorized idea of politics, a very authorized idea of a reading of politics. And so this is what's really being contested at the moment. And on both sides of these, you have serious contestations of what it means to take the issue of class seriously, as well as, and at the same time, taking the issues of race and gender seriously. And there is no doubt that these are things that definitely have to happen together. These are conversations that need to happen together, and that the points maybe of contestation should not be about authorized readings, but really how this forms a broad praxis of politics where you still have a mass-based collective of people who are committed to these issues, and you have a movement that is building itself around the importance of reading these things together. So I think that's really the contestation that's going on at the moment. And these are these are some of the issues that students have been dealing with. And yeah, I suppose what really remains to be seen at the moment is whether students will be able to overcome these gaps in differentiated access to resources or class divides between historically white universities and historically black universities, and whether there will be some meaningful collective interaction between the university as an elite space and broader society, and also whether these kinds of debates and contestations will really open themselves up to a plurality of readings, or the possibility for multiple readings, in order to build a strong collective movement that is committed to serious engagement with race and gender and class politics. Thank you.